Hello and welcome back to Click This for clicklist.net. I am your host Cigarettes and I am bringing you a Western developed shoot 'em up this time. It's the shareware classic Demonstar, and as you can see, it's got some pretty striking art, some pretty striking music. Sounds a little bit like Doom from that fake guitar whale. That could just be them using the same MIDI instruments. But without further ado, let's get into it. This is from the same people who bought you Raptor Call of the Shadows, and you can definitely see the influence in here through the sound effects, the explosions in just a bit as I blow these guys up right there. Also reminds me a little bit of Raiden, the Japanese arcade series. You can definitely see a little bit of influence in there. There's a couple of those power-ups like that. That's one of the big things of the game. If you pick up multiple of those power-ups, and yeah, look at those explosions. Those are great explosions. If you pick up multiple of those power-ups, you'll consistently of the same color. You will power up your shot. You can pick up different colored power-ups for different shots. You've also got bombs like that, which are fantastically detailed. There's a couple different versions depending on what color bomb you get, and those will just be operated in the order that you picked them up since last. These are definitely a lot different than a lot of the more Japanese focused shoot 'em ups. Yeah, you could say. For one part, you don't die in one shot. A lot of Japanese shooters, for whatever reason, you have kind of a sense of fragility that's not really present in more of the Western counterparts. Obviously, it's not a steadfast rule, and that's a pretty large generalization, but it's kind of a trend that I have noticed, especially when compared to modern shooters, especially the bullet hell shooters, which will typically murder you in one shot. Everything will kill you in one shot. There's also less emphasis on I want to say navigating, or more like controlling a space through firepower. There's more controlling space through firepower than rather than navigating one, for the most part. If you are playing a more Western produced shooter, you'll see a lot of you see a lot of upgrade systems, power-ups. It seems like there's a consistent focus on power-ups. It's not a bad thing, just it's a different thing. For the most part, Japanese shooters, you tend to have to be more aware of space or control space. There's less of, and your abilities generally stay mostly the same. You can kind of see that in stuff like R-Type, which does have power-ups, but they never really get anywhere near just the overpowered screen filling level that it does here. And even if you go to something like a cave shooter where you do get overpowered screen filling, well, you get screen filling shots. They never really get overpowered. There's kind of a baseline of power that you are consistently at, and you're more reliant on your technique to carry you through that. Not saying like you need skill to beat these games, because they're definitely their own kind of difficulty. They're just less focused on. They're just a bit more focused on building up a sense of power. I'll get into that probably a little bit more as I get a little further into this series, and I'll just drop a little bit more thoughts, maybe have a complete essay one time, but for the most part it's just me ranting right now. I really love the little pilot sound clips and their dorky little avatars up there. You can actually, one of the great things about this game is if you go in the settings menu, you can actually modify those pilot buttons to just basically whatever you want. So if you want to do something stupid like change it to Star Fox avatars, you can do that. Just please don't tell me about it, because I don't want to know. This is just a real neat shareware era kind of game. You don't see a lot of games like this anymore. Most of the space is kind of just dominated by bullet hell shmups, which I do love, but you know, a little variety in the space is great. Yeah, when done well, and I think this is one of them that's done well. I think there's definitely space for more shooters like this. It just kind of feels good to run through an enemy with a lot of firepower and not worry about, you know, having to do basically a perfect performance to get a great high score or whatever. Just run through and destroy a lot of things with a lot of firepower. This is one game that actually I think has aged pretty well. A lot of the older games use a lot of techniques that haven't, or a lot of specific graphical styles that haven't aged quite as well. I think there might be some there's definitely some pre-rendered stuff going on here, but it feels more like something along the lines of Polestar, where the art direction definitely is carrying it. It keeps it from feeling. It's definitely CG, but it doesn't feel like dated like a lot of CG tends to feel. It's a little attention to detail, like those. I keep seeing those explosions a million times, but the little extra details on it help it stand out. The soundtrack is pretty thoroughly excellent, I think. I'm not gonna say that it's gonna go down in the video game Hall of Fame, but it is appropriate. It's good, well styled. I like the style of it. I'm kind of a sucker for those old computer instrumentations, those fake synth instruments, especially those drums that feel like they're out of an 80s song. And then I just kind of like the ability to build up good power. And I do love the sound effects. Yeah. The sound effects in those voice clips definitely give it a lot of personality. You can tell it's made by the same people who made Raptor. Yeah, I love that stupid quote. That seriously stupid quote every single time. I really wish they telegraphed some of the attacks and stuff better. Once you get down the pattern, like he's gonna do laser beam right after this. Once you get down the pattern, it's fine, but it always catches me off guard because there's nothing really to warn you initially. I'm just gonna take this down and be done. Yeah, there's nothing really to warn you. Just know it doesn't telegraph it at all. And sometimes later in the game, it kind of overwhelms you. Bullets and patterns, and it's kind of ridiculous, especially if you're used to the smaller hitboxes. This is not one of those games. But the environments look good. The music's good. It's overall a pretty satisfying game. And if you play it right, you get a good sense of building up power. This is one of my favorite bombs. And you know, you get the little variety between the different kinds of bombs, weapons. That's definitely one of the things I enjoy. It's not exactly, you're not exactly changing your approach on the fly or anything by picking these up, but it's more like you pick your favorite one and stick to it. But it makes it feel a little bit more like your own. There's also 2-player mode. I believe there were 2 expansion packs, but I don't know what happened to those. I'm sure there's more levels. I just don't know if they added any more weapons or anything. Might be worth checking out. But I think I'll leave it there. So this is Demonstar. It's a little shareware. It's one of my more fun shareware game experiences over there. So I'll just leave you with that, and my thoughts on them, and then we'll return next time on Click This.